I recently spent 72 hours in Manchester, England, with the goal of seeing one of my all-time favorite artists perform in concert, Petey. So my 3-day adventure started at the Belfast airport, and I brought along an excellent book to read, On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Before booking a ticket to see Petey perform, I really did not have a desire to visit Manchester, but having a concert to go to was an excellent excuse to go explore a new city for a few days. So long Belfast, and hello Manchester. Once I arrived in Manchester, I had to take a train from the Manchester airport into the city centre. And once I was actually in the city centre, I had just enough time to find the hostel where I was going to be staying, drop off my suitcase, and get ready to go see Petey perform. Who doesn't love a good hostel stay, especially staying on the top bunk? I was super excited to finally make it to the concert venue. It was a little awkward going to a concert all by myself, but I got over it. The opening act was a band called The Life from New York City. So, as much as I enjoyed listening to The Life, I was there to see Petey. As you can see, Petey absolutely killed it, and I was standing right beside the stage. I couldn't have been any closer to Petey. It was great. I had an absolute blast in flying to Manchester just to see Petey. Was so worth it. I even got myself a Petey shirt. So day 1 in the books. Day 2 started off with some yummy Greg's breakfast, a sausage roll, and a Lucozade. But my first real stop was the People's History Museum. I really wasn't sure what to expect at the People's History Museum, but the museum had several interesting exhibits pertaining to the Industrial Revolution and different people's movements throughout history, including the women's suffrage movement, the gays against fascism movement. And I will say that the museum had a very left of center vibe to it, but I still enjoyed myself and I appreciated the museum for what it was. After the People's History Museum, I decided to check out a little shopping center area called Afflecks. And again, I really wasn't sure what to expect when I visited Afflecks. There were tons of colorful and eccentric items. Some of them were even a little offensive, but I ended up finding a lovely cardigan for myself, and it was a fun place to check out, and a place that actually has quite a bit of interesting history. After visiting Afflecks, the last thing on my agenda for the day was a walking tour, but first I had to walk past this little housing estate. I actually ended up liking Manchester a lot more than I thought I would. The city has a ton of interesting history, and it was just a fun place to explore. After the walking tour and after walking a total of 7 miles on my second day, I was tired and went back to the hostel to rest before day 3. Day 3 started with not quite a full English breakfast, but close enough, and then hopping into a van for a day in North Wales.
That is Britain's smallest house. So small you can't see it anymore. On the left you've got Telford Bridge, then the Tubular Railway Bridge, obviously the very wonderful Conwy Castle ahead of us, and just in front of us, this is where the drawbridge would have been. See this piece of blockwork just stood on its own here? This is where the drawbridge would have been. So this would have had great big stone steps coming up to it, then the drawbridge connecting it over there.
So on day 3, I took a bus tour. Well, it was actually more of a van tour because it was a nice small group, but it was a tour from Manchester to Northern Wales. Our first stop was Conwy Castle in the small town of Conwy. So you just heard from the tour guide, Chris. He absolutely killed it, and this was such a fun day getting to explore a few different parts of Northern Wales. Just look at that view. So this was the chapel inside Conwy Castle, and look at that tiny cute little window. When I was done exploring inside the castle, I went and explored the small town of Conwy. And one of the things to see in the town of Conwy is Great Britain's smallest house, or at least that's what they say. After visiting the town of Conwy, we were off to Snowdonia National Park. Snowdonia National Park was absolutely stunning. I really didn't know what to expect, but it was such a treat. Look at that wild mountain goat. So Chris, our tour guide, put on this music and told us to pretend like we were being chased through Snowdonia National Park during the Middle Ages. Kind of silly, but kind of fun.
One at the back is Mount Snowdon. Dun, 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 dun. I'm only super excited because it's called the Shy Mountain for a reason. And see that big white fluffy cloud behind it? He normally wears that like a little hat. He finds himself hilarious. Medieval farms down at the bottom there. You can see the old stone buildings and things like that there. Absolutely gorgeous. There's a lay-by just up there we use. So yeah, a lot of these stone walls have been in the same position for well over over 1,000 years. and they're left in place mainly because it's our heritage, it's part of our history. Secondly, it definitely adds some character to the area. I mean, don't get me wrong, it'd be beautiful without them, but with these wonderful stone walls here, it really adds that touch of character as well.
Our next stop was the small village of Betws-y-Code for some lunch, but before grabbing some lunch, because I am a sucker for old stuff, I decided to check out the old train station. It was such a beautiful afternoon with the birds chirping in the background. So these are probably the smallest train tracks that I have ever seen. And then behind the old train station, there was a cemetery and a church that is supposedly haunted. For lunch, I decided to try the Welsh rarebit. It was essentially a ton of cheese on bread, but it was still fantastic. Our final stop for the day was the city of Chester. It was beautiful, it was fine, but by this part of the day, I was pretty ready to get back to Manchester and play some bingo. One of my favorite things about living in the United Kingdom is the prevalence of bingo halls.
5 and 3, 53. 3 old theatre. 6 and 2, 62. 57's your first on this one, or why not double up for a quid? All in, I'm ready, line the corner, that's the ball. Here we go. Red and clean. Blue 42. White 72. White 78. White 60.
I didn't win anything significant at bingo, but it was a fun way to wrap up my third and final day in Manchester. My city breaks are not complete until I have added a new sticker to my suitcase. I was very fortunate to have fantastic weather during my time visiting Manchester, but of course, on the day that I flew back to Belfast, it decided to rain. Home sweet Belfast.